Hey, 'tis the season to give the perfect gift. C60 Evo organic oil elixirs and facial serum sets. And here with another sleep tip is our good pal, Chris Burrows, co-founder and chief scientist at C60 Evo. Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Richard, thank you so much for having me. My next tip regarding getting better sleep is related to electronic devices. So we all have these, this cell phone lying around, or we're using it on a regular basis. What a lot of people don't realize is that those devices give off blue light. That blue light is actually tells our bodies, the only time naturally that we see blue light is at the peak of the sun. So when the sun is up at its peak at noon. And so what those devices do, including your computer terminals, your cell phones, your tablets, is they convince our physiology that it's the middle of the day. You can imagine that if you're watching your cell phone or tablet at 10 p.m. and you've somehow convinced your physiology that it's the middle of the day, this is not good for sleep. So it's really important. Most devices have actually blue light blockers, and you can just go out and Google and how to blue light block on my Samsung device or Apple device, or even on your PC or your Mac. Make sure you turn that on. I know people who leave it on all day so that they're never impacted by that blue light. I would recommend 2 hours before the sun is setting in your local area to turn that on. Obviously, it doesn't work if you're working on videos or you're working on pictures, but try and turn that on 2 hours early. And the other thing regarding electronic devices, try to keep them out of the bedroom. I recommend that you actually put a charging station outside of your bedroom so that you just don't even bring it in your bedroom. These devices, as we've kind of been reading and hearing, are like geared to trigger our endorphin responses, and so we like to be on them. They keep them up. So keep it out of the bedroom and make sure you got your blue light blocker on about 2 hours before the sun sets. And I always like sharing sleep tips, because our most consistent testimonial for our product is that people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night.
C60 Evo products deliver noticeable benefits to people and pets around the world. Immunity boost, deeper sleep, just like Chris said, more energy, mental balance, flexibility, and longevity. Please visit the website c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. And don't forget, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout, EVRS at checkout, and then you save an extra 10%. That can't wait. All right, Chris, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grab a stool and come gather around the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. Carlos Cagina is the technical producer, and Ryan White is the live stream producer. Check out my YouTube and Rumble channel, Strange Planet. We are about 3 months shy of the 75th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident, but we're going to discuss it a few months early because the 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up, has just been released. The co-authors, the world's foremost Roswell investigators, Thomas J. Carey and Donald R. Schmidt, are with us for the next 2 hours. And in the annals of American UFO history, few incidents have inspired as much fascination and speculation as the one in Roswell, New Mexico. In July of 1947, that summer, during the dawn or at the dawn of the Cold War, when the U.S. Army Air Forces sent out a shocker of a press release announcing they'd recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. Then a few days later, the story changed, and it was reported the debris recovered was in fact a weather balloon. But behind all the UFO mania, there lies an uneasy truth. And the events that transpired that summer are anything but clear-cut, with admitted cover-ups and conflicting explanations. Witness to Roswell remains a classic in the field of ufology. It's filled with hard-hitting eyewitness testimony of one of the most important events of all time, the actual recovery of a UFO outside of Roswell. For more than now nearly 75 years, government authorities have led us to believe that the wreckage was merely a very conventional weather balloon. But the witnesses who were there continue to tell a different story. Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition, once again provides a can't-put-down written account of what really transpired in Roswell 7.5 decades ago. It pries loose the truth the government doesn't want us to know, including the revelations of Walter Haut. And the 75th edition, 75th anniversary edition, includes a growing litany of deathbed confessions describing the little people recovered at the crash site. The most comprehensive timeline of events ever published on this seminal event. The identity of the Boeing engineer called in to examine the exotic wreckage from the crash. What really took place at the Roswell Base Hospital, and what the nurse actually ordered. The children's caskets. The story of the soldier who wore gloves at the dinner table after guarding the bodies. Clearly, the implications of this information are foreboding. One need only look at the fact that officials now have 4 explanations for this historic event, but to which one do all the witnesses testify on their deathbeds. Thomas J. Carey has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Temple University, a master's degree in Anthropology from California State, and he also received a fellowship to pursue a Ph.D. in Anthropology at the University of Toronto. Tom became interested in UFOs while in high school and rekindled that interest in 1986 when he became the MUFON State Section Director for Southeastern Pennsylvania. And since 1991, Tom's research is focused solely on the so-called Roswell Incident that occurred near the town of Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947. Tom also became a special investigator for CUFOS, the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies, in 1992, and served on its board of directors from 1997 through 2001. He's appeared as a guest on a number of radio and television shows concerning the Roswell incident, as well as appearing in several film documentaries. Donald R. Schmidt, the former co-director of the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies, where he served as director of special investigations for 10 years, and prior to that, he was a special investigator for the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek for the International UFO Reporter. Don graduated cum laude from Concordia University with a degree in liberal arts. He's the author of dozens of articles about UFOs, as well as the co-author of a number of best-selling books, UFO Crash at Roswell, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell. And great to have Tom and Don back on the program. Welcome back. How are you both?
Nice to be with you again, Richard.
Same here, Richard. Great to be back.
75th anniversary. What's now the original came out, I think, in 2009, so 13 years ago. So what is new in Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition?
Wow. Actually, the first edition came out in 2007, Richard. It did so well. It was the top-selling not only book about Roswell, but the top-selling UFO book in the world for 2 years. And the second edition followed in 2009, which also became the top-selling UFO book in 2009. So that's what precedes the current book. This will actually be our 11th book, if I have the count right. This will be our 11th book about the Roswell Incident. And it is a third edition, updated, revised for the 75th anniversary. And certainly the last big event for Roswell, Richard, was the 50th anniversary back in 1997. And so this is 25 years after that. We don't think we're going to make it to the 100th anniversary. So,
speak for yourself.
So we had it. We put together a new edition, updated and revised with new conclusions. And I believe we want to save something for the readers. So, but they will certainly find it well worth their time.
So 75 years, the eyewitnesses, I would imagine, all gone. Many of the children, if not most of the children of the witnesses have passed, I'm guessing. So Has the final chapter on Roswell been written?
Well, as you mentioned, just with the families, we find ourselves still coming across information from family members, from relatives. They pass it on. And the wonderful thing about even secondhand testimony, that if it corroborates the firsthand that we've collected over these past over 30 years, it becomes very substantial. And so the investigation remains fluid in that regard, because we still intend on tracking down families, especially those of many of the reluctant witnesses we had encountered who refused to give us any information right up to their very deathbeds. And the hope now is that they did finally pass something on to a wife, a son or daughter, that can then be related to us. So it's, as Tom knows, it's always exciting when we get a piece of new information. And as often as we've had phones slammed down on us and doors slammed in our faces through the years, it's something that most of our colleagues in the field have never dealt with. To them, an investigation is something over the phone. Maybe you go out into the field and you kick the ground around a little bit, you look up into the sky with a pair of binoculars, and maybe you have some witnesses present to relive the experience. That's the extent of it. But Roswell, given that it is the granddaddy of them all, and because it encompasses every possible aspect of a UFO case, or any event for that matter, where you have wreckage, you have bodies, you have a survivor, you have civilian witnesses, you have military from different facilities, and then you have the testing and the analysis, and then everything that has transpired up to today, which has necessitated the fact, as you mentioned at the beginning, Richard, that we are now up to 4 official explanations. Tom and I often joke, husbands, try that with your wives. But, the government, we let them get away with that. And it still comes back to who has all the eyewitnesses. Well, we do. The government has 0. No one. And that's why we've often been told we could go in any court of law and win this hands down. And that confidence and that level of accomplishment has only grown through the years.
If you had to take this case to court, and all of the witnesses, the Mac Brazells, the Sheriff Wilcox, the Jesse Marcells, the Colonel Blanchards, the Brigadier General Roger Ramey, and Brigadier General Thomas Dubose, who would you put on the stand as your star witness?
Well, Richard, there are several star witnesses. It's one of numerical superiority. I would say the first witness we would put on, at least this was my humble opinion, would be Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Easley. He was interviewed early on, around 1990, 1991, when our investigation had, we were still presented with a possible crash on the plains of St. Augustine, which is 150 miles west of Roswell, as the possible location of the crash. We weren't sure, but Kevin Randall interviewed Easley, and to every question that Kevin asked him, he said, "I can't answer that. I'm sworn to secrecy." Okay, another question. Nope, sworn to secrecy. So I know myself, if I get that answer often enough, I say, "Well, have a nice day, Colonel. Thank you." But I guess Kevin, he was getting near the end, and he had answered every question with that, "I can't speak to you because I'm sworn to secrecy." Kevin said, "Well, can you answer us this? Are we going in the right direction?" And there's a pause, and Easley says, "Well, what direction is that?" And Kevin said something to the effect, "Well, we think it's a UFO, a captured flying saucer, crash flying saucer." And so there's another pause, and Easley says, "Well, let me put it to you this way: you're not going in the wrong direction. Well, that was a sea change for us. I had not yet joined the investigation yet, so this occurred maybe a year before I joined. But that was a sea change because it focused our investigation that it was really a crash of a flying saucer, or rather than a weather balloon or anything else. And that's who I would put on first. Don maybe would agree, or he has another someone else like Walter Howard. I don't know what he would say.
Should I?
Yes. Please do.
I would concur as to the importance of Easley, who was head of the 1395th MP unit. So he was in charge of all security at the recovery sites and then at the base itself. So in other words, everything that went down, he would have been privy to. He would have been, giving out orders as far as all the enlisted men, everyone who was involved. But in my case, it would be the civilian, the principal civilian, that being the ranch foreman, W.W. Mac Brazo, because not only the debris field, but also a number of the bodies at another site, and then specifically the way he was then abducted, kidnapped by the military, the way he was kept for 5 days, deprived of water, food, kept up all hours of the night. And then when he would talk about the indignity, how embarrassed, and the fact that he was subjected to a full body cavity search, that type of thing. Can you imagine describing that in a courtroom, on the stand, that you were subjected to a full body cavity search looking for pieces of a weather balloon?
I would like to add another one, a third one, if I could. Another sea change type of witness, Lieutenant Colonel, later General Thomas Jefferson Dubose.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, the official Air Force explanation for years at that time was that it was a weather balloon. They first said it was a flying saucer, which they were correct about that. But then within hours, they changed it to a crashed weather balloon. Well, in 1990-91, I think Don interviewed him. I think Stanton Friedman interviewed him, and Don.
The two of us did, correct, on two different occasions, right?
Yes, Don interviewed him, and the main point of Dubose's testimony. Now, Dubose was the second in command. He was the adjutant commander, deputy commander at Fort Worth, Texas, Fort Worth Army Airfield, the headquarters of the 8th Army, which the 509th Bomb Group in Roswell reported to. And during the press conference, this is the weather balloon press conference, Dubose is present, and Ramey puts out the weather balloon story. Well, that holds for years. And in 1990-91, Don interviews Dubose, and Dubose says, well, that weather balloon story, that was a construct. We put together that story. It wasn't true, but we were told to make up a story to get the press off General Ramey's back. So we put out this weather balloon story. It's not what happened, but that's what that story was. It was just to get the press off General Ramey's back. It wasn't true. So I would say that's another important witness. Certainly, Jesse Marcel, also the first military person that was at the crash site. So, and perhaps Don could talk about maybe I'm sure he would include Marcel.
I would, and the fact that we have eyewitness testimony, we have good reason to believe that Marcel also was aware of the bodies recovered. And so we ourselves would love to have had the opportunity to question Marcel. And I think the one thing that we still consider investigative malpractice is the earlier investigators. They never thought about taking the very head of intel of the 509th at Roswell, the highest ranking officer to first arrive at the scene of the crash. And the investigators never bothered to take him out there, to have him actually relive the experience, describe what he saw where and the extent of the debris and his impression being back there after all those years. And we would have relished such an opportunity. And we just came into, Marcel had died in '86, so we missed him by 3 to 4 years.
Sorry about that. My mute mic stuck. Sorry about that.
I had lost you.
My apologies. When Jesse Marcel went back to the base and they were putting this report together, he was saying this is none of this world and so forth. Who overruled him in the writing of that report and told him, you're not happy with it, take it up with Washington?
Well, Marcel, that wasn't Marcel. Cavett wrote the report. This was the CIC Counterintelligence Corps Captain Sheridan Cavett was not under the command of the 509th Group. His command was in Washington, the Counterintelligence Corps. So he went out to the crash site with Marcel. And, he saw everything that Marcel had seen, namely wreckage from a crashed UFO. And so they come back to the base. Cavett came back first with a load of wreckage, and then Marcel came a little later. And what happened was that they sent Marcel off to Fort Worth, because they had changed the story. They were going to change the story, rather. So they send Marcel to Fort Worth with a plane load of wreckage, and Cavett remains in Roswell. So when Marcel gets back, the story had changed, but he demands from his compatriot who was at the crash site with him, I want to see your report to the CIC command in Washington. His next higher boss actually was in Albuquerque, a fellow named Doyle Reese. I want to see that report. And Cavett says, nope, you can't see it. And Marcel was a major, and Cavett was a captain. He says, I outrank you. Give it to me. And he says, no, I don't answer to you, Jesse. I answer to the people in Washington. Take it up with them. So he never did get to see that report.
When he was posing, when Jesse Marcel Sr. was forced to pose with the pictures of the what was the remnants of a weather balloon in Fort Worth, and you can see on his face this look of,
oh yeah,
like what did they just do to me? What kind of a fast one are they trying to pull here? And in the picture we also have Roger Ramey, and then later I think Ramey is posing with the same debris with Brigadier General Thomas Dubose, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Colonel at that time, Colonel
Dubose. And this brings me to the famous Ramey memo, because this just broke a few years ago when Ramey was holding something in his hand, and a photographer you walk us through the story. Who first noticed that memo? Who was able to kind of enlarge it, and what did it say?
Well, I'm gonna set it up. I'm gonna set up a press conference quickly, and then I'm gonna toss it to Tom, because Tom spent a lot of early years working on that memo. So let me just start by coming back to the original press release and the fact that the only person that is mentioned in that release was Major Marcel. Only name that's in the press release. And he's conveniently, initially, on his way to right field. He left at 3 o'clock that afternoon of Tuesday, July 8th, within just a few hours after that press release hit the wire services. Now, the base commander, Colonel Blanchard, he's announced he's going on leave. Well, anyone who's been in the military, including Tom, you realize you don't go on leave after a holiday weekend, because then you get docked for both. You would tie the two together. So it made absolutely no sense on a 4th of July weekend that on a Tuesday, July 8th, you would then finally go on leave. Well, in reality, as his operations officer, Colonel Joseph Briley, told us, that the leave was a blind, as he called it, that he actually had set up a base of operation at the crash site, have open radio communication back to Washington and Fort Worth, and so that's where he was.
He was undercover, so to speak.
Earlier.
Sorry, Don, I got to jump in here because we have to take a timeout. Apologies for the interruption. We'll come back and pick it up on the other side. Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey are with us as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of Roswell and the 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell, just released this month. Back with more of our conversation right after these.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
Welcome back to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. It's time to redefine reality. This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
All right, welcome back. Don Schmidt is with us, and Thomas Carey as well, as we discuss the 75th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident and the 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell, just out this month. So, Don, we're talking about the Roger Ramey memo, setting up the press conference, and how Colonel Hout had
circumstances were and how it to actually be available.
Left on leave on that Tuesday, just after a long weekend, which was kind of odd. But in fact, he wasn't on leave. He went out to the crash site and was doing a little investigating of his own.
Correct. Well, set up a base of operation, as they would call it. Correct.
Do we have Don?
And sure, who initially...
Who's Don?
Yes.
Oh, are you there, Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
I am
there, Don Schmidt.
Yes. So the rancher who initially...
Oh, sorry about that. There we are. Sorry about that. I'm having some technical problems here. Okay. Go ahead, Don, if you could pick it up on with the press conference.
The rancher reported the crash. He is by the military, so he's in community. And Jesse Marcel, he is of the impression he's going to Fort Worth to take some of the actual debris there to be tested and analyzed. Well, mid-flight, they're told they're making a preliminary stop at Fort Worth. That General Ramey wanted to see the wreckage. So Marcel would describe how he would take some of the actual wreckage to Ramey's office, place it on his desk. They'd go to a map room. And when they would return, the actual material is now gone. It's missing. And in his place is that weather balloon, that neoprene rubber balloon with a radar reflector kite, a hexagonal Rowan target device, which is foil, wooden sticks, string, and tape. And in the hallway, are a whole cluster of reporters who've been tipped off that there's going to be a press conference and they're going to actually display the flying saucer, pieces of the flying saucer from Roswell. Well, wouldn't you know it that Ramey then only allows one single reporter by the name of James B. Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram to take pictures. The rest are kept in the hallway. So much for this being an open press conference. And as you were describing, Richard, how then Marcel is ordered by Ramey to crouch down and pose with the substituted balloon, holding up sheets of the radar kite. He's then told not to say a word to any of the reporters in the hallway, and they keep him overnight. He's not allowed to even fly back to Roswell till the next evening. Well, in the subsequent pictures, as you mentioned, there are 2 shots of Ramey alone, and then 2 additional of Ramey and DeBose. And in all those 4 shots, he's holding what is a piece of paper, which we identified back in 1990 already, what appeared to be a press release, a telex. And at that time, when we learned that the original negatives still existed, we managed to get copies, and we saw that we were just on the cusp, that we were that close to hopefully being able to read what we suspected was nothing more than a press release about the weather balloon. And Dr. Richard Haynes did some computer enhancement, and he came up with one word, balloon, which would further solidify our position at that time in 1990, that this was a press release about the weather balloon. Well, we were wrong. And so I'll let Tom take it from there, because the rest is now history.
Yes, back when Richard Haynes did his analysis, I don't know if it was just the magnifying glass or the
computer enhancement, Tom. It was computer enhancement. That's all it was at that time.
Okay, well, it wasn't as sophisticated as later photographic software. So he could only identify one word, which was balloon, as Don said. But later on, and beginning, I guess, in somewhere in the mid-1990s, a fellow by the name of Dr. David Rudiak, an optometrist. He was an expert with computer software, and I myself had the computer. I still have a computer software, but just to speak of my analysis first, Stanton Friedman had also made a copy of these photographs. I think there was a total of 6 photographs taken. And if you go by the folds in the telex that Ramey is holding, you can tell which photos came before another, in sequence. Well, the photo we're talking about was the last one with Ramey in it, and in it you can see he was between the takes, between the photographic takes, you can see that he was trying to quickly read this telex, because it had more folds in it as the photo shoot progressed. So the one we're talking about, it shows about 1/3 of the page of the telex, beginning at the top. And Stan Friedman had also made a copy of it, and I actually bought a CD disc from Stan for $25. So I took a look at it, and so help me, this is the honest-to-God truth. When I brought it up on my computer, within 10 seconds, I was able to read the victims of the wreck you forwarded to the blank at Fort Worth, Texas. The victims of the wreck that you forwarded to Fort Worth, Texas. And within 10 seconds, I was able to read that. I also was able to read the words meaning of story, which was talking about the press release, weather balloons would make, and as it turned out, would make their story better if they demonstrated. And the last was something about ray wind cruise in Roswell. So I was able to get that much out of it, but David Rudiak got a lot more than I did because, you know, he's an optometrist, and but basically that was he developed the sentence that there was a second site and that there were aviators in the disk, and they mentioned Roswell. Things that I couldn't make out, David was able to make out. And what it did is it proved the, you know, what sort of victim does a balloon coming to the ground, what sort of victim can that have? It lands on your head and you laugh about it. So it was a smoking gun. I believe we still call it the smoking gun of Roswell.
The two Air Force reports, facts versus fiction in the New Mexico desert, and then case closed. Did they interview then Brigadier General Thomas DuBose? Did they mention the Ramey memo? Did any of that come up in either of those reports?
Well, the DuBose had already passed in 91. So the Mogul report came out in September of 1994. And the main reason, as even Newsweek magazine put it, when we were fortunate enough to become involved with the late Congressman Stephen Schiff of New Mexico, and Schiff for trying to get answers through the White House and through the different branches of the military, and the Pentagon being denied even by the Secretary of Defense, Les Aspin, at that time on 3 separate occasions, that he had a promise from the Air Force, specifically the Air Force, should they find anything, he would be the first. Well, keeping as far as maintaining their policy of deception and cover-up, he was the last, because they went public. They had a press conference in September of 94 where Colonel Richard Weaver announced that the original balloon explanation was a lie, and they presented their new theory about this Russian spy balloon called Mogul. Well, the fact that they were coming out with a third explanation at that time, and we were surprised that the only witness that they went out of their way to speak with was Captain Sheridan Cabot, then a retired lieutenant colonel. And what I don't think they were privy to was the fact that we also were in contact with Colonel Cabot. And in fact, we were there with the Cabots, both Sheridan and his wife Mary, in May of 1994 at their home in Sequim, Washington. And as we were leaving, after again spending another afternoon with Cabot denying he was involved, that there was anything recovered, that was nothing out of the ordinary, and all at once his wife says, "Tell the boys about the colonel from the Pentagon who was just here to interview you." And he gives her a look, like a cut through steel, and then he whirls and he looks at us and goes, "Yeah, and I told him exactly as I'm telling you. I wasn't involved." Well, aren't we surprised that when we see the report come out in September that there's a full-blown, sworn affidavit, Cabot, describing the full recovery, and that he immediately recognized it as being this Mogul balloon, and albeit he never bothered to tell the base commander at Roswell, or even Major Marcel, who was with him at the time. But he referred to his being interviewed by us, and it just was the fact that they specifically selected as a star witness the one person that they knew would stand by their third explanation, and that being this Mogul balloon nonsense.
John, I got to jump in again. Sorry for the interruption. We'll come back. Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt. Stay with us as we continue to delve into the incident at Roswell, the 75th anniversary. Stay with us.
When you look at the sky, ever wonder
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin, or astaxanthin, is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of Potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
The truth will set you free. But first, it will really tick you off. Welcome back to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition, just out this month, in anticipation of the actual 75th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident. July of this year will mark, again, 75 years. And Thomas, Carey, and Donald Schmidt stay with us. I was talking about the 2 U.S. Air Force whitewashes, fact versus fiction and case closed. Has there ever been any discussion about a third, getting them to write a third one, but maybe a little more open-minded, like, so they could go back and consider some of the evidence that the 2 of you, for example, have uncovered with eyewitness testimony and deathbed confessions and so forth?
You mean by the Air Force?
Or even Congress?
Well, I believe I'm trying to think. There was a congressional one-day hearing in 1968 after the Ann Arbor, Dexter, Michigan sightings. There was a one-day conference, and it led to nothing. And certainly, Roswell has become known around the world. Certainly, the 1997 50th anniversary and did a lot to publicize the case. And I believe the most important book up until then was not only the 1980 Roswell Incident book, but the Randall and Schmidt's 1991 UFO case, UFO crash at Roswell. But no, the Air Force, here's the thing, Richard, because of those 2017 Elizondo produced videos from the Navy, where they had the gun camera video of chasing UFOs. One off the West Coast in 2004, the so-called Nimitz event, and one in 2014 and 15, the USS Theodore Roosevelt. That has lended an air of credibility to the whole subject of UFOs. And a new task force was created in 2007, the ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Project, for 5 years. And its successor, the UAP, that's the government's new term for or UFOs. They'll never say UFO. They'll call it UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. They've created a new U.S. task force. But the thing is, and I think Don will agree with me on this, that they will never revisit Roswell. I mean, they will concentrate on more recent sightings, et cetera, because they can't go back to Roswell, because they will have to admit that they have been lying to us for 75 years about the phenomenon of UFOs, and they will also have to answer for the civil rights violation that the government, the Air Force, the Army Air Corps, perpetrated upon the civilians of Roswell and Corona, New Mexico, back in '47 to silence them. And they don't want to answer for that, and they don't want to answer that they've been lying to us for 75 years about something. Well, geez, what else have they been lying to us about? So that's what I believe anyway. I don't know if Don agrees with me on that or not.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense.
About the current UAP report that came out last June, that they only acknowledged the phenomenon back to 2004.
Right.
And I think that was done very intentionally, that the fallback could still be someone else's technology. But going back to the 40s and 50s, and Russia was hardly in the position, and China was still a third world country during all those decades. So they wouldn't acknowledge anything back to 1947 for the reason that Tom mentioned, and also for the fact that unlike this elusive phantom that is out there, and we're trying to determine what it is and what its origins and what its intentions are. Well, to acknowledge Roswell, they'd have to actually, reveal the fact that, well, yeah, we did capture one. We have the remnants. We have the debris. We have, the craft. We have the bodies, that type of thing. But I think, Richard, you'd find it even more interesting when Tom and I are asked today, where do you believe the Roswell wreckage presently is?
Oh, yeah. Listen, we're gonna leave that as a cliffhanger, Don, because this was a short segment. We're gonna pick that up on that point exactly on the other side. Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, stay with us. The 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell. We'll tell you how to get a copy as well. Stay with us.
If you're sure your phone isn't tapped, call now. 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
The truth goes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. You're listening to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. We're now crossing a zone of turbulence. Please return your seats and food trays to their upright position and make sure your carry-on luggage is safely stowed. You're about to leave everything you know behind. This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
Living in Place. Live. Brought to you by or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
All right, Don Schmidt was just about to reveal where you believe the wreckage from Roswell lies.
And I'm going to toss this to Tom, because he loves, making this major revelation, because it's also one of the reasons that they are not forthcoming, because they would have to acknowledge the fact that they don't have it any longer. They've lost track of it. They don't know where much of it is, if not all of it, by today's standards. So go ahead, Tom.
Yes. We have an associate in Florida, and he has allowed me to use his name as Anthony Bergalia. And he's an independent investigator, indefatigable, if I'm pronouncing that right. He's indefatigable. He doesn't take no for an answer. Like if somebody slams the phone down on him, that would be enough for me to end the conversation. But he calls them right back and says, "You're not going to, slam the phone down on me," and he's just indefatigable. So his quest in the Roswell investigation has been trying to find out what happened to the wreckage. Where did it go? Well, we know from witness testimony over the years that it was taken to, most of it went to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, and now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Most of it went there. Perhaps some of it went to Los Alamos and Alamogordo and places like that, but most of it went to Wright Field. So he was also trying to find out if any back engineering had taken place with the wreckage. He found out, yes, they had contracted, Wright-Patterson contracted with Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio, just down the road from Wright-Patterson. And they were tasked with the job of trying to back engineer the so-called memory metal. This is the metal, a lot of the wreckage was this small pieces of memory metal where it was light as a feather, looked like, thin aluminum. You could wad it up in your hand and crumple it up and open your hand, and it would just float there in the air, and it would not have a crease on it. You couldn't cut it, burn it, deform it in any way permanently. So he wanted to know what they were doing with it in Battelle, and he discovered that in 1962, the Naval Ordnance Lab, because Battelle didn't want to have their name on anything having to do with UFOs or flying saucers. So they laundered the discovery or the development of something called nitinol. They had, over the years, they had tried, to meld elements together, metals together to recapture the qualities of this memory metal. So in 1962, the Naval Ordnance Lab announces the development of something called nitinol. The NI stands for nickel, the TI stands for titanium, and the NOL stands for Naval Ordnance Lab. And you can look it up on your computer. You can buy it by the roll, by the coil, and it's our best chance, or our best final result of trying to recapture the properties of the so-called memory metal. So, and the thing is, Anthony, he has the progress reports, because Battelle would report to Wright-Patterson, every so often on their progress, and he has those progress reports. So that's one thing that they did develop from the Roswell crash. Now, as far as, oh my goodness, I forgot what was it?
Oh, we were talking about where is the wreckage?
Where is the wreckage?
Okay. Where is it now? So, Anthony, in 2017, after viewing the Luis Elizondo videos, he put together a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, to the Department of the Defense Intelligence Agency at the Pentagon. He put together a FOIA request wanting to know where the UFO wreckage is. Where is it? Where do you have it? And what have you been doing with it? And 3 years goes by, no answer. No answer. So Anthony has the ability to file a lawsuit. So he says, okay, you're not going to answer me. I am going to file a lawsuit for you to respond. So he had an answer within 2 weeks, and it was from the FOIA spokesperson for the Department of Intelligence, or the Defense Intelligence Agency, on their stationery. They said the wreckage, UFO, they called it UAP, not UFO. The UFO wreckage is no longer in government hands. It's in private hands. It's at the fellow's name is Robert Bigelow. Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas, Nevada is where it's at. And here's what they've been working on. Now, I won't go into all the titles of some of these projects that they were working on and still are at Bigelow, but they appear to be testing or investigating time travel. It's slowing down the speed of light. One of the projects is trying to slow down the speed of light. Believe it or not, don't ask me how you do that. But they're these exotic programs that they're doing with certainly the Roswell wreckage. It looks to me like they're trying to discover the nexus of the time travel. From my understanding of what I read.
So a Freedom of Information request, he was told that the UFO crash debris or wreckage is no longer in government hands. Right there, that one document, I mean, we talked about the Roger Ramey memo being the smoking gun. Isn't that, in fact, the smoking gun? The government has acknowledged they were at one time in possession of crashed or a crashed UFO?
Well, the Ramey memo, the key word in the Ramey memo, because there's a lot of grain in it, so you just can't keep enlarging it because you enlarge the grain as well. But the key word in the Ramey memo, and I think Don will agree with me, is the word victims.
Mm-hmm.
There's no balloon coming to the ground. They go up, they expand, they explode, and they come down. There's going to be no victims to a balloon.
Agreed. But this FOIA request, the government is admitting that they had past tense possession of the UFO, and now they don't. I mean, that to me,
now in private hands, because private companies, and Bigelow Aerospace was already in the business of government contracts. So, and Robert Bigelow himself was a good friend of Senator Harry Reid, who got this ATIP program going.
Right.
So, that's how it all worked, is they were good friends. And so of the $22 million under the ATIP program, most of it went to Bigelow Aerospace. So they were already in that business. So, Las Vegas, Bigelow is in Las Vegas, and Area 51 is not far from there. So we think the wreckage was there at some point, but now it's in private hands at Bigelow Aerospace, and it all falls together.
Has Bigelow confirmed or denied he's in possession?
What Richard is asking, that even with the response to the FOIA request regarding their one-time possession of the wreckage, that this could be construed as another smoking gun, correct?
Oh,
right.
Certainly. They've been trying to walk back ever since this Luis Elizondo stuff. They've been trying to walk it back to like, we always experiment on exotic metals, that we want to use in our fighter jets and our bombers and our rockets. And they tried to combine it into all these other programs, but Anthony Bragalia has it on record from the Defense Intelligence Agency that they had UFO wreckage. Well, even though they call it UAP, they have UFO wreckage. It's now at Bigelow Aerospace, and he has that in writing. He has that in writing. So,
and I know we have to take a break at the top of the hour, but when we come back, Richard, you should ask Tom about the response, especially within the UFO community, when Bragalia went public with the fact that he did have a response regarding their one-time possession of exotic, as far as materials, from a UFO, UAP, and how he was treated just for going public with the fact that this is the response I received.
All right, we'll do that on the other side. Thomas Carey, Donald Schmidt, stay with us. the 75th anniversary of Roswell. Back with more in a moment.
Keeping an New World Order Incorporated.
Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Following the truth wherever it leads. Exposing evil and corruption and the secret machinations of powerful elites. Revealing the high strangeness beneath the surface of our supposed reality. Coming to you from the Great White North and his studio beneath the stairs. Here's Richard.
Earth, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett on Zoomer Radio.
Thanks for inviting me into your home, your long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' well-appointed basement with the simulated wood paneling, electric fireplace, and the painting of dogs playing poker, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Ryan White is the live stream producer. Carlos Cagina is the technical producer. Check out my YouTube and Rumble channel, Strange Planet. Don't forget to hit the red subscribe button. So we are continuing to talk about the UFO incident at Roswell, July of 1947, days after something shiny crashed in the New Mexico desert. The Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release that read the military had recovered the remains of a flying disc. The story was quickly changed to the recovery of a weather balloon, and that story would change several more times over the years. We are commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident, albeit 3 months early. Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition, is now out. Co-authors Don Schmidt and Tom Carey are here. So we were talking about Anthony Bragalia? Bragalia. And he issued this FOIA request, and looking for the who possessed the Roswell UFO debris, and he was told that the government no longer is in possession, and that it is now in the possession of Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace. So when Bragalia released this information, how was he treated by the UFO community?
Well, Richard, there's a lot of people in the UFO community, believe it or not, that don't like Roswell. They have their own little specialties, other phenomena, crop circles, cattle mutilations, that sort of stuff. So he was called, they said they accused him of revealing government secrets. They said he is guilty of treason. All sorts of stuff where you would think like, oh boy, at last we know where it's at. And this is not from information from Uncle Harry. It came from the Department of the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington. So you would think it would be, like the clouds are parting and the sun is bright. And it was anything but that. He received a lot of abuse. Some of it out of jealousy from other researchers, but others were just they don't like the Roswell case, and the government tried to walk it back, like oh no, we weren't talking about UFOs, we were talking about just metallurgical research. Well, it was too late for that because Anthony already had it in writing of where the wreckage is and what they're doing with it. So it was a mixed bag, Richard, of response where I thought it would have been universal, at least non-governmental, universal applause for Tony. And, at last we know, but it was mixed.
Well, I mean, that story should have been bigger than the New York Times piece in December 2017, don't you think?
Yes. If not only these people would have any research backgrounds regarding, the military/government. I mean, how many people aren't even aware of the fact that the United States military/government doesn't manufacture anything? Everything is contracted out into the public sector. And lest we forget, President Dwight Eisenhower's, dire warning about the military-industrial complex taking over the government here in the United States. And through the years, Tom and I, we've interviewed first-hand witnesses. He had mentioned, not only, we had Wright Pat, but Patel Institute, we had Los Alamos, but we also had Boeing, we had Lockheed, we had Hughes Aircraft, we had Rand Corporation, we had the Bureau of Standards, all talking about testing this exotic material from Roswell in 1947. And so, is it any wonder that as they were waiting for a breakthrough, they were hoping that somebody would finally find the on button to, this new technology way beyond human comprehension. And that through the years, as they would get this report, we need another year, we need 5 more years, we're working on it. Unless we also forget that just within the last year, the late Senator Harry Reid also publicly made the statement, and I know there too, it was reeled back, it was retracted, but he made the statement that it was his information that Lockheed was in possession of some of this wreckage, some of this hardware. And so they keep waving this carrot. They dangle this carrot that, yes, we have wreckage, we have hardware. And so that they play this shell game with us. And what Tom and I are saying is that they have acknowledged, we have people such as Luis Elizondo, who, will make, that actual statement that, yes, they are in possession of the physical wreckage recovered in whatever manner, shape, or form they did, that we have, pieces of a genuine flying saucer. So all we're trying to do is now determine where it may be. And so we can't even make a suggestion, as Tom just described, without colleagues within the UFO community jumping on it and saying, well, you're putting the cart before the horse. You're making such a claim without having any evidence. Well, if we haven't already established that a crash took place in 47, then the next logical question becomes, where is it? And I'm sorry if we're performing due process in now trying to determine where it is. And we feel that the government has already acknowledged that they too are trying to find out where the remnants presently remain.
Well, has anyone gone to Bigelow and asked?
Robert Bigelow, is he still alive? I don't know if he's still alive.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. No. It's publicly, they don't want to know. They don't want to know, and they certainly don't want us to know. But Harry Reid certainly knew, because it was Bigelow who got Reid interested in UFOs when Bigelow was doing all these contracted projects for the government already, space-related. I think it's called Bigelow Aerospace Systems or something like that. He was already in the space business, and he got Harry Reid interested, and it was Harry Reid who got the ATIP project going. So, government senators, Congress people, they don't want to get near this subject. They don't want to get near this subject. And Marco Rubio, a senator from Florida, I thought quite courageously, was the one, I believe, in the Senate who tasked the Defense Department, the Pentagon, with putting a report together that he gave them 180 days. President Trump signed the law. It was part of, I believe, a COVID type law, and he gave them 180 days from December of 2019 to have a report, which they did. So, but most of your senators and Congress people, they don't want to get near this subject, and that all goes back to the mid-1950s with the so-called contactee people who were coming out of the woodwork saying that they had just been whisked around the solar system by our space brothers. And that, I mean, that really damaged the whole phenomenon for decades. And so, no, I don't think any of the senators or Congress people are asking anything about this other than, you know, when the report came out.
And what about Brigalia? Has he gone back to Robert Bigelow and pressed him on this issue?
Oh, he tried to get to Bigelow. Yes, he did. He couldn't get past the Praetorian guards. He tried to contact Bigelow, and he finally reached the former lawyer for Bigelow Aerospace. He's retired now, but he finally interviewed the lawyer because everybody was saying, "Oh, you want to talk to this guy? No, you want to talk to that guy." And he finally got to the lawyer of Bigelow, and the lawyer, when he started asking penetrating questions about these projects, the lawyer hung up on him.
See, Richard, what we also have to consider is that Bigelow's name has been bandied about for many years now. In fact, most probably aren't aware of the fact is that Bigelow was with us in New Mexico back in around 1991. And that's where he first got his feet wet regarding this subject. I know he had an experience many years before, but this is where he went public. And wouldn't you know that everybody and their father's son were lining up with these pet projects that they presented their wish lists about Bigelow, providing special grants and funding. And I joke, for example, that I knew Robert Bigelow when he was just a multimillionaire. And so many of our colleagues, the very same ones that now are, casting, this gloom and doom about us continuing to, working on Roswell, were the very ones that ruined our relationship with Robert Bigelow. So if that not being the case, we probably would still have an open door, and we may have those answers that we've been searching for. But you notice that whether it's Christopher Mellon or Luis Elizondo or even the late Harry Reid, the one person who is strangely absent in all of this and has been since the 2017 New York Times story is Robert Bigelow.
Yeah, he's been awfully quiet. I mean, he made that famous appearance on 60 Minutes talking about UFOs. I'm not sure what year that was. Was that after before December 2017? Do you remember that interview?
Yes, absolutely. And he was right in the reporter's face telling her, you have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, you don't have any knowledge of exactly what information that the government has regarding, this situation. And that has been the last, Richard. And I'd like to believe that there's something forthcoming, but as Tom would also note, that Bigelow Aerospace, how many people, they laid off everybody, correct, Tom, during COVID?
Everybody. They laid off everybody when this stuff started to arrive, and they started building new facilities. So it's not like it's closed down. They built new facilities, windowless. They don't have windows, and he laid off everybody. Except
remarkable
on the projects.
Do we know? We hear about these little tiny pieces and the memory metal and so forth. Is it possible that there are larger pieces of the craft that survived that we didn't hear about? All we hear about are little tiny pieces.
Most of them were little tiny pieces, Richard, like the size of the palm of your hand. But because it blew up and it didn't crash, it blew up in the air. We believe it was from a lightning strike or an internal explosion. It's just speculation, but that's what we believe. But the inner cabin survived. There was an inner cabin, according to witnesses who found it, that survived the explosion and came to rest 35 miles east-southeast of the so-called debris field that Mac Brazel discovered. So yes, there was a larger portion of the craft, like I said, the inner cabin or an escape capsule of some sort that did survive.
Instrument panel?
Even we were even fortunate enough to interview the paper boys in downtown Roswell on Main Street who worked for, the two newspapers, the Roswell Daily Record and the Roswell Dispatch. And they would, be, peddling their papers on opposite sides of Main Street. And both of them now, as grown adults, describing to us how they witnessed the convoy, arrive from north of town, and with the lowboy, the flatbed truck with the tarped, egg-shaped silhouette underneath this canvas covering, as it proceeded under heavy guard, back to the base. And so...
Right down Main Street.
Right down Main Street. And one of the things that tipped us off, one of the things that always pointed to something much closer to Roswell, the debris field is 65 miles northwest in another county, Lincoln. Roswell is in Chavez County. And the fact that why would the sheriff of Chavez County and his deputies, and why would firemen from Roswell go to another county out of their jurisdiction? I mean, it doesn't happen. And yet it kept pointing to something just north of town. It kept pointing to something being separate from the debris field. And as Tom just mentioned, the impact site with the remains of the capsule, the cabin, and then the remains of the crew.
Well, which brings me to little Joe Montoya, the lieutenant governor of New Mexico. Now, he died in the late 1970s, I think. So, did you ever interview? Well, let's tell the story. We've told it before. You've told it before on the program, but for those who are new to the show, tell us a little bit about little Joe Montoya, then lieutenant governor of New Mexico, and what he saw at the Army field.
Yes. We did not interview little Joe Montoya directly. We got the story from one of his staffers that worked for him in the Senate. In 1947, he was the lieutenant governor of New Mexico, and at the time of the crash, he was in Roswell, and he was down there for some occasion. When the bodies and the wreckage started coming in, he was already on the base, or it was either he was already on the base or he was ordered to go to the base. I don't recall which it was, but he found himself on the base, and he was interviewing some of his loyal Montoyistas, young supporters of little Joe Montoya. And so he headed over to the base hangar. One of the hangars there, hangar P3 back in 1947, building 84. It's still there today, although most of the other stuff is gone. But he went over to the hangar to interview some of his, he was told there were some loyal Montoyistas over there. So he went over there and he ran right into the recovery operation. So he goes into the hangar and he sees the wreckage, but what really set him off was viewing the little bodies. He saw the little bodies and he lost it. So he goes to the phone. He calls one of his Montoyistas in Roswell. Get over here quick! Get over here quick! Get me the hell out of here! Get me out of here! And so meet me at the big water tower, which is still there. So he calls the Anaya brothers, Reuben and Pete Anaya, and so they come over to pick him up, and out bolts Montoya from the hangar, runs to the car, jumps in the back seat. Let's get the hell out of here. And so, according to the Anaya brothers, on the drive out of the base to Pete Anaya's house, he's rocking back and forth in the back seat, rocking back and forth. Oh my God, they weren't human. They weren't human. They weren't human. So they get to Pete Anaya's house, and he says, "Oh, I need a drink. I need a drink." So they, excuse me, they bring in a little shot glass of Jim Beam and gulp right down. Oh, I need some more. That's not enough. So he gulps down the bottle of Jim Beam in 3 gulps. Ruben and I had described it as bam, 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 and the bottle was gone. And so he goes over, I got to lay down. So he laid down on the couch, went to sleep, but it was not a restful sleep. He just kept, nervously twitching and moving around. He just couldn't sleep right. And so finally he got to sleep and woke up later, and he says, okay, take me to my hotel. He was staying at the Nixon Hotel. That's spelled Niksin, not Nixon, at the Nixon Hotel in Roswell. And so we got the story from, Pete Anaya's son, John Anaya, who was a staffer. And I said, did Montoya tell you the story about at Roswell? He said, yes, he did tell me. I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, yeah, I believed him. But Anaya told me, he said, if you ever tell that story to anybody, I will deny it. So that's how we got the story. I believe it. I think Don believes it. And it was quite a reaction to a U.S. He was lieutenant governor. I think he became senator in 1964, replacing Dennis Chavez, the former senator. And I don't recall when he passed away.
I think it was 1978. I was looking, and I'm guessing never spoke of it again.
Correct. Not publicly.
All right, I got to take another time out, gentlemen. Stay with us. Back with more of our conversation. The 75th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident. Will also take questions from the live chat. Get them ready, and Ryan will, my live stream producer, will curate those, and we'll get them on the air. Stay with us.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett.
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin, or astaxanthin, is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of potent C wild Alaskan sockeye omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
This is Richard Serrett's Strange Planet. Follow Richard on Twitter at Richard Serrett. For show information, visit the website strangeplanet.ca.
To see how we're bringing the movement to Ontario, visit us at Natural
Of the universe. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett on Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Donald R. Schmidt and Thomas J. Carey, co-authors of Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition. How do we get a copy?
Well, the book is available certainly on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble, all fine bookstores throughout the country.
All right. So we were talking about little Joe Montoya, and I'd asked, later he became senator. He saw the bodies. He never spoke of it again. You said at least publicly. Did he speak of it again privately, and has that information come forward?
We only know the story from the Anaya brothers and their son John. We never spoke to little Joe, and I am unaware. I don't know if Don is or not. I'm unaware that he ever spoke again publicly about it.
No, but because we had entered the investigation a good decade after he had passed away, as Tom mentioned, we interviewed the Anayas. We interviewed Mary Anaya, Pete's wife, and she even described the military coming to their home, and there was a argument that ensued out in the front yard, and that Mary was then told by her husband that they were warned that if they ever talked about this, that they would be killed over the situation. And then later, we even tracked down, we sat and met with Montoya's private pilot, who went by the name Red Worley. And we spent a morning with him at a Denny's restaurant. And he wouldn't acknowledge even that much, but we tripped him up on a number of things, and we came away clearly convinced that he was not only the pilot, but that he fully was aware of the story.
The U.S. Army threatened the lieutenant governor of the state of New Mexico that he'd be killed if he talked about it?
Well, no, this would have been the Anayas.
Right.
Yeah,
that if they repeated anything that they would have heard from the lieutenant governor.
Sheriff Wilcox of Chavez County, based in Roswell, he was fluent in Spanish, so they used him to issue the death threats to the Hispanic community in and around Roswell. And the Anayas, we learned from Pete and Mary and Reuben that the sheriff pulls up in front of their house, so they figure, oh, what does Sheriff Wilcox want? He's probably, wants to, a nice visit. Well, Sheriff Wilcox came to their house to issue the death warning that if they talked about this, they would not only be killed, but also their children and other family members would be killed if they spoke publicly about what they knew about the little Joe.
My word. The pilots that flew the wreckage to Fort Worth and to Wright Pad, did they also fly the bodies?
Well, there were numerous flights. In fact, the first flight would have been the Pappy Henderson flight, we believe. He was a member of the Green Hornets, O.W. Henderson, one of the best pilots in the U.S. military at that time, and he flew a C-54 cargo plane that went directly to Wright Field. And in his case, when he confessed to his wife, Sappho, as well as his daughter, that he flew not only wreckage, but a number of the bodies, that he even witnessed the bodies at the very hangar Tom had mentioned earlier, P3, Building 84. And then you had the subsequent, the Marcel flight, originally on its way to Wright Field, and then with the stop at Fort Worth for the balloon press conference. That was on a B-29 called Dave's Dream. And then there was a flight that came in from Washington that a counterintelligence Master Sergeant Non-Commissioned Officer Louis Rickett described to us, and he handled a box of debris up into the cockpit, recognized the pilot, he would later talk to thereafter. We recount that story in the book. And then we have another flight that went out on Wednesday, July 9th, involved the 393rd Bomb Squadron. We tracked down and talked to as many of that crew who were still alive, and they all confirmed the flight of a large wooden crate that was hidden in bomb pit number 1. That was a B-29 called Straight Flush, and they flew directly to Fort Worth, and were convinced that was the second load of bodies that went out from Roswell.
Do we have any sort of chain of custody of the bodies after that?
The bodies, the one we lose track of is the live one. The dead ones, we believe there were 4 dead and one alive of the crew. Like Don said, the first flight was the Pappy Henderson flight of July the 8th that went directly to right field. And the second one was a day later. This was the one with the big crate, July 9, 1947. That was supposed to go to right field directly, but it went to Fort Worth first. And what's interesting about that flight, it was a 55-minute flight from Roswell Field to Fort Worth in Fort Worth, Texas, was that when the flight was landing in Fort Worth, one of the officers on the straight flush recognized a mortician friend of his waiting on the tarmac for the flight, along with the officers on the base. He recognized a mortician. Now, what would a mortician be doing waiting for a flight from Roswell with a big box in it with, guess what? So those were the body flights, and Don has already alluded to those. And we have a witness on the tarmac, or I'm sorry, on right field when that flight arrived. And he said that this would be the Pappy Henderson flight. He says the C-54, and out from the cargo came 3 stretchers, and they were moving really quickly towards the medical building. These 3 stretchers, and this one fellow who was there at right field for a physical, to whether he was going to remain on flight status. He actually failed his test, but he said he saw these 3 stretchers come out of the C-54 and quickly went into the medical facility. And all he remembers, he didn't know any details, but he said they were very short and frail, but they had large egg-shaped heads. So that's what he remembered from that. So little interesting stories like that.
So Rich had mentioned, asked about the chain of custody. One of the things that suggested the extraordinary situation was at the weather balloon press conference in General Ramey's office at Fort Worth. He canceled in front of the press the resumption of that flight, which was to then continue to its original destination at Wright Field, that the material was going to be tested and analyzed. Well, Ramey canceled that. Well, if you go to all the press accounts at that time, that was incorrect. And specifically, there was an FBI telex that went out at 6:17 that very evening from the Dallas FBI Bureau office, which refuted that. It stated that based on their telephone conversations with Wright Field, it was not a weather balloon, it was something else, and it was going on to Wright Field for testing and analysis. And then there were even press accounts that reporters got spokespeople from the Pentagon that even stated that the material was at Wright Field for testing and analysis. So that's a matter of historic fact, that all the press accounts beyond Ramey's cancellation of such testing, it did actually take place.
All right, we have to take another time out here. When we come back, we'll get. We've got lots of great questions from our live chat for Don Schmitt, Tom Carey, the 75th anniversary of Roswell. Stay with us, more to come.
Corporations, governments, and entire...
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
As you're staring up at the night sky, ever wonder who's staring back? You're listening to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
Hurry into Pollock's Carpet Market. Hurry out with beautiful the faint-hearted. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
All right, let's go to the YouTube live chat. Mark Hemphill asks, either Don or Tom, could UFOs be held at Fort Knox?
Fort Knox?
Well, that's where they're supposed to keep the gold, but some suggest there's no gold there, so they might have room for some UFOs. I don't know.
I'll let Don take that one.
Oh, thank you. No, you are right. You are correct, Richard. We hear more than ever that whatever gold was being stored and preserved there has long been removed, and so I'm sure it would provide ample space for something else, on such secured facility. But we've occasionally had people suggest that, but we've never had any testimony or any reason to believe that. It's only been suggested. And I think because obviously such a facility as Fort Knox would be considered one of the most secure, areas, of the world for that matter. And but again, no information to that regard.
I've never heard that one till Richard just asked. I never heard that one.
I've come across it a number of times, but like I said, that was as far as it went because we've never had any witnesses, even second or third, make that suggestion.
All right. Thinker is asking about writing on the craft. Something he's referring to it as quote end quote angel writing. Any markings on the craft?
The wreckage. We know the. Jesse Marcel Jr. spoke of the symbols on these things he called little I-beams. They had little pastel shapes of, undecipherable markings on these I-beams. It was also reported that there were some symbols on some of the wreckage. There's not a whole lot on that. I believe at some point our investigation tried to get a linguist to try to decipher some of the writing, but it was undecipherable. But I'm not sure about that. But I think Don was involved in that.
All right. JT asks, supposedly the military ordered, now we're getting to the Glen Dennis story here, the mortician at the Ballard Funeral Home. The military ordered a mortician to construct small coffins. Well, they asked him to order some for the bodies. Why would they even need coffins per se if they weren't going to have a burial for them? Good question. So the Glen Dennis testimony, he got a call from the Army Airfield asking him for tiny childlike coffins. Good question. Why would they need coffins if they weren't going to bury them? Did he deliver those coffins?
Well, the one feature of the Glen Dennis testimony that we do accept, that we do agree on, because we have multiple witnesses that also heard within days that Glenn had received phone calls from the base hospital, that someone was inquiring as to not only preservation techniques for remains for bodies that had been exposed to the elements for a number of days, but then specifically as to, as you mentioned, Richard, the availability of child-sized caskets. And the information at the time was that they did not have any in stock, but we had also the good fortune of receiving information secondhand, but from the son of supposedly the contract driver who typically would make the drive, the long drive up to Amarillo, Texas from Roswell and pick up, just caskets in general. And that the son recalled how they were child-sized, that they made the long drive, they returned back to Roswell, and the town, the city, had been pretty much cordoned off, that they had to circle from the east to the west side of town before his father was able to drop him off at home and wouldn't return to the next morning. And that the caskets were taken out to the base hospital, and they did not involve children. So they kind of put two and two together that maybe it had something to do with the rumors of that crash flying saucer north of town. So Tom was more involved as far as with the nurse at the Ballard Funeral Home, who actually would have responded and then filled that order for these child-sized caskets. So there was a nurse, but it wasn't someone who was out at the base at that time. It was someone who was actually on contract with the Ballard Funeral Home. I'll let Tom take that.
All right.
Yes, this gets back. This is the part of the Glen Dennis story that we don't believe Glenn was actually involved in, that he picked it up from somebody else. But we do believe his story about receiving the phone calls about the caskets from about a half a dozen people who remember him talking about it. He added this other part that he had gone out to the base delivering a injured airman who was injured in an automobile or accident, and the Ballard Funeral Home also had the contract, ambulance contract, and I don't know about you, I don't think I'd like to be taken to the hospital in a hearse.
It's one-stop shopping.
That's not a good
exactly.
look, So while Glenn was at the hospital, so he said, he ran into his nurse friend there. He did not recognize a lot of the people and doctors there, and his nurse friend said, "Glenn, you better get out of here. You're going to get into trouble." And he didn't, what's going on. So he winds up getting escorted out by a red-haired captain and telling him, "Go home, and you'd never come back here. You're not supposed to be here." Blah 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 blah. So it turns out that we searched for Glenn's nurse because he gave us a name, Naomi or Maria Naomi Self. I might have that backwards, but Maria Naomi Self or Naomi Maria Self, one of those two. And we spent 2 years looking for her. There never was such a person in the military. And she allegedly had crashed over in England, so we couldn't interview her. So we went back to Glenn and said, "Glenn, there's no such a person." He said, "Well, I gave you a phony name." "Oh, that's just great." I mean, we spent 2 years of our own time and money looking for her, and it was phony. So right away, in a court of law, he would be impeached. He would be impeached as a witness.
Right.
So,
Sorry, Tom, I got to take another time out. This was a short segment. We'll come back and we'll pick up on the Glen Dennis story and that nurse, and also more questions from our live chat. Tom, Carey, Don Schmidt, 75th anniversary of Roswell. Back with more in a moment.
This is no place for the naive or the faint-hearted. The Conspiracy Show with Richard.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. We're now crossing a zone of turbulence. Please return your seats and food trays to their upright position and make sure your carry-on luggage is safely stowed. You're about to leave everything you know behind. This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Strange Planet.
Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
And a few minutes remain with Tom Carey, Don Schmidt, 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell. Back to the live chat questions. You Betcha asks, why has human spacecraft technology been largely stagnant since the 1950s? All the while we've had the Roswell craft for 75 years. Excellent question. Don, Tom?
It is. But as we had alluded to in the first hour, that I think it's quite a case of human arrogance. The idea, it's like Will Smith in the movie Independence Day, that he's able to jump into the cockpit of that extraterrestrial craft, and he's able to fly it like he's done it 100 times before. And Tom and I would suggest that one of the reasons for the cover-up is the fact that, as I said earlier, they still can't find the on button. They still cannot, bridge that technology. And as a result, what have we craft would suggest that it's still well beyond our comprehension. And so we shouldn't expect anything, in the near future. And we'd like to believe there have been some near breakthroughs here and there. But, and it's been suggested even fiber optics may be one of them. But that's as close as they've come to, actually determining the nature of the technology.
All right, back to the bodies now. YY asks, were any attempts made to preserve the alien bodies? Well, Glen Dennis talked about that a little bit, if he's to be believed on this count, about dipping them, I think, in formaldehyde or something.
Yes, some of the calls, you got at least 2 calls on how to preserve tissue, organic tissue that had been out in the desert for several days. The best way to preserve it. And so that's they were dead, and they were out. According to our calculations, they were out on the desert floor from the evening of July the 2nd until the first discovery, which was of the bodies, which was on July the 7th, I believe, when they were discovered north of town, and then they were discovered also at another site at the same time. So they were out on the desert floor about 5 days, and it's hot and sunny out there in the month of July down there in Roswell. So yes, that they would be beyond preservation, I believe, the dead ones, and the ones that were with the inner cabin at least had the one that was alive at least had a place to protect itself from the elements when with the craft that was still intact. So that's all we know about the preservation at Wright Field, and later on they originally kept them on ice. They had an ice house there. They were kept on ice. But at some point, they obtained cryogenic suspension capsules, and we have witness testimony that they were kept in these cryogenic capsules in suspension to preserve them as they were.
Chuck 1776 asks, this is a classic story about Jackie Gleason, I believe was living in Florida at the time, and his golfing buddy, President Nixon, drove Gleason to a base and showed Jackie Gleason Chuck is asking about a UFO, but I believe Jackie Gleason claimed that he saw alien bodies.
Tom, why don't you wrote that section in the Touched by Roswell book, so.
Did I?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yes.
You did.
He was Jackie Gleason was living he changed his base of operations from New York City to Miami, Florida. And he was a big golfer. He loved the golf. And so did President Nixon, who had a vacation place in Key Biscayne, Florida. So it was only a matter of time until the two met up on the golf course. Jackie Gleason had a passion for the subject of UFOs at the time, and no doubt when they were on the golf course, at some point he told Nixon about his interest in UFOs. And so one night, I forget what year this was, 1972, 73, in that range. So at midnight one night, there's a knock on Gleason's door, and it's the president. This is according to his wife at the time, Beverly McKittrick, who was also a golfer. And we get the story from her, because Jackie never spoke publicly about it. And so Nixon's at the door. He says, come on, Jackie, I want to show you something. So out they go. And according to the story, Nixon had ditched his security guard, and he was driving the car. There he had the President of the United States driving the car to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. In they go into a secure facility. Down the hallway, Jackie sees some wreckage. He says, what is that stuff? And so Nixon said, no, follow me. So in they go to a room, and there's, I don't know how many aliens, one or two, I don't know. But according to the story, there were several aliens, little guys with big heads on gurneys that Nixon had shown to him. And that's the essence of the story. And so according to his wife, when Jackie got back home, he was very upset, or shook up, really shook up. And he had difficulty getting the story out, but he got it out, and we learned about it from his wife. But that's basically the essence of the story.
Do you believe it?
The ordeal had inspired Gleason to have quite a UFO book collection. When he passed, there were over 700 books that were donated to the University of Florida at Miami. And Gleason's home was shaped like a flying saucer. That he intentionally, had his house constructed to look like a landed UFO.
Do you believe that story? Is that possible that the president would have that kind of access?
Well, let's keep in mind that at the time of Roswell, Dwight Eisenhower, 5-star general, as it turns out, one of just a handful, was the chief of staff of the Army. And Roswell was an Army incident. There was no Air Force in July of 1947. So Eisenhower would have been right at the very top of people in the know. Well, who was Eisenhower's vice president? 8 years, Richard Nixon. So there's good reason to believe that Nixon would have also known directly through his boss.
Excellent point.
Then story of Gleason and Nixon, then all the more conceivable. We can't prove it, but it's certainly a very strong possibility.
I think we have time for one more quick one. Craig asks, Tom and Don, what are your opinions on ancient alien crash sites and Antarctica crash sites? Well, that's a big question for 2 minutes. Why don't we talk about Antarctica? There's rumors about this enormous craft there that's emerging from the melting ice down in Antarctica. Any thoughts?
Well, I've never heard of that one, so I'll let Don take care of that.
I have, but again, to me, it's reminiscent of every few years they relocate or they locate Noah's Ark. And to date, I don't know that anyone has ever come up with anything conclusive. So we'll wait and see. But something that big, they shouldn't be able to hide. We know that the Nazis, that the Germans were working. I mean, they had an Arctic base. We know that the Soviets, have had bases within Antarctica and through that region. So let's just say that we're no strangers to such locations. It's a question of then who is the originator of such an object. We know, for example, that they found a B-29 submerged as far as up in the Arctic Circle. And they managed to bring it to the surface. They managed to put new engines on and everything. Terrible story because there was a fire in the radio equipment, and they spent over a year salvaging, that. So we know that there are aircraft of our creation at both locations. So we'll wait and see.
All right, gentlemen, congratulations on the 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell, available at Amazon and fine bookstores everywhere. And always appreciate your time and enjoy speaking with you once again. Thank you, guys.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Richard, for having us, and we'll do it again, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Don Schmidt, Tom Carey, Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition. All right, that's it for me. My thanks to Ryan and my thanks to Carlo. I'll be back next week with a brand new show on shared death experiences with one of the pioneers in the field. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There is nothing concealed that won't be revealed, and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite. I'm coming home. Good night.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at strangeplanetpodcast.com.
Hey, 'tis the season to give the perfect gift. C60 Evo organic oil elixirs and facial serum sets. And here with another sleep tip is our good pal, Chris Burrows, co-founder and chief scientist at C60 Evo. Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Richard, thank you so much for having me. My next tip regarding getting better sleep is related to electronic devices. So we all have these, this cell phone lying around, or we're using it on a regular basis. What a lot of people don't realize is that those devices give off blue light. That blue light is actually tells our bodies, the only time naturally that we see blue light is at the peak of the sun. So when the sun is up at its peak at noon. And so what those devices do, including your computer terminals, your cell phones, your tablets, is they convince our physiology that it's the middle of the day. You can imagine that if you're watching your cell phone or tablet at 10 p.m. and you've somehow convinced your physiology that it's the middle of the day, this is not good for sleep. So it's really important. Most devices have actually blue light blockers, and you can just go out and Google and how to blue light block on my Samsung device or Apple device, or even on your PC or your Mac. Make sure you turn that on. I know people who leave it on all day so that they're never impacted by that blue light. I would recommend 2 hours before the sun is setting in your local area to turn that on. Obviously, it doesn't work if you're working on videos or you're working on pictures, but try and turn that on 2 hours early. And the other thing regarding electronic devices, try to keep them out of the bedroom. I recommend that you actually put a charging station outside of your bedroom so that you just don't even bring it in your bedroom. These devices, as we've kind of been reading and hearing, are like geared to trigger our endorphin responses, and so we like to be on them. They keep them up, so keep it out of the bedroom and make sure you got your blue light blocker on about 2 hours before the sun sets. And I always like sharing sleep tips because our most consistent testimonial for our product is that people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night.
C60 Evo products deliver noticeable benefits to people and pets around the world. Immunity boost, deeper sleep, just like Chris said, more energy, mental balance, flexibility, and longevity. Please visit the website c60evo.com/Richard-Syrett. And don't forget, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout, EVRS at checkout, and then you save an extra 10%. That can't wait. All right, Chris, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at strangeplanetpodcast.com.